He's got to be the last person you want your team when you're chasing points.
A little dodgy call where they should have gone the video ref there, ended up costing the game.
If that was a forward pass, I'll bungee jump with no rope.
You basically can only beat who you have in front of you, so yeah, I think that's awesome.
And they're doing that, so good luck to them.
Crowd is ready, players are ready, referee says go.
Welcome to the most must-see NRL podcast. Welcome to the NRL Point of Difference. We are well on our way to the 2020 finals, and it looks like the final 8 is locked in. Despite Cronulla being smashed by the Knights on Friday night, they appear to have claimed the 8th spot after Warriors were narrowly beaten by the Eels on Sunday. Before we start, you may have noticed a new design on our video. We must give credit to the Capta projects, who have been great for us. If you're in the need for advertising or require a new business logo, I would strongly recommend that you use the Capta projects. You can visit their website, which I will provide in the description. They're an extremely friendly bunch of blokes and they're very reasonably priced, so please check out their website and Instagram page to see what they're all about. Having all said that, Preeti, how was your rugby league weekend?
My rugby league weekend was fantastic. I was stuck at home all weekend because I actually had a corona scare. I
didn't know that. Maybe
got tested for Friday night, so I had to isolate all weekend, which meant I just watched rugby league all weekend. But don't fear, negative.
You know, the hairdresser I went to on Saturday actually had a coronavirus scare at 2 p.m. Someone who was infectious went there at 2 p.m. Luckily, I went there in the morning.
Jeez.
But Jesus Christ,
there's a few close calls, but I did the right thing and got tested, which meant I got to watch rugby league all weekend, which wasn't the worst thing.
That's exciting. In fact, I might get coronavirus just so I can stay home and watch rugby league replays.
You won't regret it.
So we mentioned last week that the top comment would get picked, and we'll discuss that. So congratulations to Cam McBrien. Is that his name?
McBrien, yeah.
McBrien. So he says the comment, "Hey guys, long time listener, first time commenter. Wondering whether or not you think the Newcastle Knights' inconsistency with the massive difference between their best and worst makes them a smoky for the final series."
Well, firstly, thanks Cam. We appreciate the support and much appreciated. Good question. You are right in terms that they are, they've shown that they can play at their best and challenge the good teams. They beat Canberra earlier in the year, but then at their worst, they've lost to the Cowboys and the Bulldogs. So there is a big contrast between their best and their worst. But I just don't think that their best is good enough to match the top 4 teams.
I agree with you there, but I don't know if inconsistent is the right word to describe them. I think just certain teams I'll struggle with when push comes to shove, and I don't think they're a legitimate threat. I think anyone with a decent game plan or a coach and knows how to exploit their weaknesses will take advantage of that. Their defense is obviously their best strength, so I can see them winning those real close games when it comes to the finals, and I could actually see them beating any of the bottom 4 teams in the top 8, as we saw with Sharks this week.
If Ponga plays like the way he did against Cronulla, then they do have a chance because he is just phenomenal. And you're right, they definitely can beat the bottom 4 teams, but I think it hinges too much on the way Ponga plays, and he can't do it all on his own.
And I even think they'll have a legitimate threat against Parramatta, like they had a couple of rounds ago, where they only lost by a small margin.
I think it was 2 points.
Yeah,
and that was when Parramatta were on their hot streak as well. Not now, where they've had a couple of losses and are going backwards.
We look at their recent win over Sharks. So Sharks played absolutely awful, didn't they? I remember messaging you. I was at a party.
They just didn't want to do the gritty, dirty work to win a game. They thought they could just turn up and play touch footy and beat Knights. But Knights were up to give them credit. They had to bounce back after their very disappointing loss against the Warriors, which they did so in dramatic fashion. They played very well against Sharks, smashing by 30 points. And as I mentioned, Ponga was scintillating. But to answer your question, I don't think that they're a smoky. I don't give them any chance of beating Roosters, Storm, Penrith in finals footy.
Well, I think Cronulla and Newcastle will be the first teams out of the finals. That's my prediction. And I haven't been the best on bold predictions, but that's not really a bold prediction because I know that's going to happen.
Well, that makes it bold, though.
If they get the right opponent, I think they can beat. But I don't see them beating Rabbitohs or or Raiders if they happen to drop down.
Well, if it's finals footy this weekend, they'll play Souths at Newcastle, which at Newcastle is a big advantage because their home fans really get around them. They like young person's town in Newcastle. They love their footy.
Yeah, good old Matty Johns convincing Ponga to come to the club.
Pierce.
No, it was Ponga. Yeah. But who have Newcastle been convincingly this year? That you can say. I know they tied with Penrith, and that was actually a gutsy win. Not gutsy win, it was a draw. Yeah. But that's because they had their top three playmakers out.
They were ravaged with injuries that day. Pierce went out in the first.
But that was also quite a while ago. But since then, I don't think they've had a convincing win at all throughout the season. So, yeah, they started the season well, and I think that's what's been holding them in a well stead coming later this season. But I just don't see them being a legitimate threat.
No.
I know we said that was the only comment we would go into, but another interesting one that we saw from Joshua Lasso, is that how you pronounce it? Lasso?
I'm going to say Lasso.
Lasso.
I think, yeah.
Okay. Well, he made the comment that says that the Premiership is basically a three-horse race, and when was the last time we saw the competition this top-heavy? Well, I think you look at past seasons. Obviously, you only remember the grand finalists, and you say, "Oh, those were the two teams that could potentially have won." But you look at every year. There's always been 3 or 4 teams that could potentially win the comp, and it's always the top 4 that could win the comp, especially if they win that first round. You look at last year. Even Souths were a threat last year, as along with Raiders and.
The Souths were in the top 4 last year.
Yeah, Souths. Yeah, and also Melbourne. Obviously, we could also win that. You look at the year before, you also had South, Roosters and Melbourne.
Yeah, it's usually the 4 teams. That there are a bit of a gap between the top 4 and the bottom 4.
Yeah.
5th and 6th, you can argue that they've got a chance. But really, to win a premiership, we've seen what history's told us that you got to come top 4.
Yeah, but there's usually about 3 teams roughly every year that can win it. The only outlier I can think of was 2017, where the clear-cut favourites are obviously Melbourne, and they absolutely smoked every team. And for some reason, Cowboys just went on a roll that year in the finals and beat Parramatta and Roosters in straight succession. So that was the outlier. And then obviously they faced Melbourne, which was slim pickings. But my best year, 2016, I don't know if anyone remembers this year, but Cronulla started the season very well. I think they had close to 13 wins in a row in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
And you also had Canberra, Melbourne, Cowboys, and Brisbane, and also Penrith were also a smoky that year because they kept on making those returns that year. But that was a fantastic year in terms of competition. I think no one knew who was going to win that year, and obviously Cronulla got their first premiership ever. So that was
And it's always nice to see a team that isn't Melbourne or Manly or Roosters, who are so used to seeing there or thereabouts in the last decade or so. So even this year, it's nice to see Penrith up there.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be the Battle of the West, hopefully, for that first finals game. And that should be exciting. But I don't know if we'll be able to get that unless Parramatta drop to 4th.
I think they will come 4th, Parramatta.
Yeah, well, that should be good. That should be exciting. But moving on, what were your highs this week?
I have to say, West Tigers come from behind victory. It was a seesawing affair. Manly looked to have it in control the majority of the game. Plenty of tries. No one wanted to tackle in that game, which made for exciting viewing. But I couldn't believe. I walked away and had dinner at about 15 minutes ago and thought Manly had this sewn up. And then
wait, so you telling me you left the game?
No, I had it on still in the side room, but I wasn't paying
okay.
attention. And I kept saying, "Oh, they've scored again! They've scored again! Hang on a minute." And Adam Dewey was the star, and he won the game for the Tigers.
Yeah, we mentioned in an earlier podcast saying that Dewey is perfect for that centre position, and that's exactly where he cut.
Yeah, he's just got that build for it. He's just a tall, rangy, good one-on-one player. He beats his man more often than not. He made 6 tackle breaks on the weekend, which highlighted that. And I think Mumbai is a better attacking weapon at fullback for them. He's got more to offer. than Dewey, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you in that formation. I don't know why they didn't put Dewey at centre to start off the season. I guess it's taken them a while to experiment and work out what works for them. But now their seasons are obviously over, they can experiment and see what works best. But that brings me to my low. My low was actually Manly's performance. So at the start of the season, I actually had Manly as one of my top 4 easy picks, and I was so confident in that. But for whatever reason, they've just been ridiculously underperforming this year, even with their injuries.
Yeah, I'll tell you the reason. It's Tommy Taylor, but you can't keep making that as an excuse, can you?
Well, he always misses about 6 games every year. But yeah, it is a big loss. I knew as soon as they lost him, it was a big X factor they lost. But Cherry Evans just hasn't been rising to play. Their forward pack, I've really liked Sheridan in their forward pack, and Thompson's been playing well as well. But for whatever reason, I think they're lackluster in the forwards. Fanua Blake and Tapau's obviously been out, but Fanua Blake's probably been one of their strongest forwards this year, and can't really name anyone else that I can really think that stands up.
They lack a bit of depth. Like at full strength, their team is there's premiership contenders, but when they lose, Tommy, and they lose a forward, like they've lost Tapau and Fanua Blake for a little bit of the season this year, and they've really struggled to replace those bigger names.
Yeah, but losing 14 points with 10 minutes to go is just disgusting. That's inexcusable.
Who's on your team? And from Manly sides I've grown up watching, that's never happened. So it was pretty crazy times. And there's Hasler. He was not happy.
Well, I think he mentioned that they had the game won 10 times over, and they found 11 ways to lose it. So I don't blame him for being frustrated. In terms of my high, I think you have to. We've been very high on the Warriors this year, at least in the recent podcasts. And his Warriors are always everyone's second team. And that was a really gutsy performance by the New Zealand Warriors on the weekend. They obviously had that sin bin in the middle with Jazz Tavanga being sent off, and that's when they leaked, was it 10 points? But that obviously put dug a hole that they had to dig themselves out of. But you've got to think about the Warriors. So they're actually underperforming under full strength at the moment. So they've got Fusatua and Kemalalo. They went home.
They're 2 starting wingers, and one of the best wingers in the comp, that pairing.
But yeah, but maybe that's kind of where they're going right, because there's players out there playing for a position and they're really wanting to exceed.
Prove themselves for next year.
But you also got Parsi and Pulu out, who went home as well. You got Armel and Bunty Afoa, who are out, injured for the entire season. You got Hetherington, Herbert, and Katoa out as well, and that they were missing in that game. So they've got quite a lot of talent, and I'm kind of excited for the Warriors next year. But in saying that, I've been a big critic of Nathan Brown, and I'm not sure if he's the right coach for them at this moment. But having Phil Gould guide him, I think will put them in great stead. So I think if Peyton was still with the Warriors, obviously he's heading to Cowboys, I would have been more excited for their 2021 season, but I can't really get excited at the moment for them.
They've come out of nowhere, and they've surprised a lot of people, including myself, and it makes you think that where's this been all year? And it could have been what could have been for the Warriors if they had their players the beginning of the year. They had a team throughout the year, full strength, that they really could have, made the finals and given it a shake.
You mentioned before about the travel toll of how it impacts certain teams, and you mentioned last week about Cowboys travelling so much. Do you think that's the issue with the Warriors, where they're constantly travelling 2 hours or even more in some instances when they have to travel away?
Well, do you mean this year or in previous years?
This year they've been holed up in the Central Coast, so they haven't had to worry about
it. They know they're from New Zealand. They're playing the only team in New Zealand. They've got to go travel every week if they're playing away. They've got to get used to that. That's who they are. They've got to own that and be able to win away from home.
Well, they're going to make that home game their fortress, and they can't afford to drop any of those games. So,
yeah, well, it's the same for those teams that travel to New Zealand.
They're at a disadvantage themselves.
You've got to make sure that you don't lose too many games at home, because winning away is tough. My low for this week is Cameron Smith. Believe it or not, I'm just a bit fed up with all this Cameron Smith talk about if he's playing. Will he play again? Where will he play? Is he going to retire? And it's just dominating all media. Every game I'm trying to watch, I'm just seeing Cameron Smith, and I'm just sick of it. I just want to watch the footy and talk about the game that's on at the moment or the issues that are on, but not Cameron Smith's future. I think we should just let him decide what he wants to do, and when he decides, he'll let everyone know, and then we can talk about it. But for now, let's just drop it. And, Cameron Smith, I'm sure he's got in his mind what he wants to do. I think he could be waiting to find out if they're going to win a premiership.
I think he's an attention whore. That's what it is. Look, just make a decision already.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's been in the game for long enough to work out the media's agenda. But if Storm do win a premiership, I think he'll retire. What do you reckon? What do you reckon he'll do?
I think he should make a decision before then.
I'm a hypocrite. I'm saying what he thinks Cameron Smith will do, and I'm saying I'm sick of everyone else doing it.
Well, no, but that's it. He should set a deadline. He should say, look, at the end of the year, I'm going to make a decision. What he's doing is selfish.
Well, he said it about a month ago that week he'd have it settled, and it's 3 weeks later, and I've heard nothing.
Well, the longer it's drawn out, the worse it is for the players' morale. Not only just the players that potentially are at that hooker position and those teams.
Yeah, and their careers hinge on his decision.
Exactly. So not knowing what their future can be can impact the team long term.
Yeah.
I know the effects of kind of when those good long term players leave a club. Like you look at Cowboys and the effects that they've had when Thurston moved on, and you look at Brisbane with Lockyer, and it's just it makes a big impact because they don't have like a player who is on the same caliber to replace that player, and it just leaves a massive hole in your team, and it's always difficult to replace those gun players. And obviously Smith is a future immortal, so it's impossible to replace. But yeah,
you should be giving the Storm adequate time to plan for next year without him.
Well, exactly.
If they are without him.
Especially considering they've got Grant and Braden Smith on the sidelines waiting for him to make a decision. I just think it's just so dumb what he's doing.
Anyway, we move on from Smith.
Well, we mentioned before about Dewey. Was he the player you can't fault this week?
The player I can't fault. Now, this is your segment. He'd have to be. He was my player of the round. As I said before, the move to centre was a touch of genius from myself and Michael Maguire. But and even his goal kicking, he was copping some serious abuse from the
that wasn't abuse. He was
from the punters.
But
it was not abuse, but it was quite funny watching the punter on the sideline telling him which way it's going to go to compensate.
But that kick actually won them the game as well.
Yeah, well, I think he kicked 2 from the sideline, and it was his 10th kick for the year or something like that, which has been Tigers' Achilles' heel, with Moses Mbai kicking it like 65% this year, which is probably the second worst behind the Knights because their kicking's been atrocious as well.
I remember one of those games when, like, I think Tigers were versing Bulldogs and Lola was kicking and he missed so many kicks, and that was the reason why they lost the game.
They had a goal kicker for a while, since Pat Richards.
Yeah, why was he a winger and have a foot? But that's the thing about goal kicking, is that it can actually impact the game. You look at that game earlier this year where Cronulla could have beaten Parramatta, and you know that Johnson, if he kicked at least 2 of those kicks that he missed, they would have won easily.
Yeah.
And
it's underrated.
Yeah. And they actually scored more tries than Parramatta that game. So,
and I just want to give a wrap to the Titans' second rower, young up-and-coming star, I believe, Bo Firma, I think his name is. He's only played a handful of games, but he looks like a player. He's played 3 or 4 games this year, scored a couple of tries already, scored 1 on the weekend, filled in at left centre for the Titans when Brian Kelly went down on the weekend, and just filled in superbly. It didn't even look like there was a centre missing out there, so he's pretty versatile as well.
But that's the thing about Titans. They've got so many great talented players in their reserves, and they just don't use them, and they outwardly, buy one quick fix. Like, they've got the same issue with the Tigers, so... Like, they signed Peachy, for example, and paying absolute premium prices when they probably had homegrown talent that they could have used. Like, you look at Mead, for example. Like, they had him and Stephen Michaels was his name, I think. But that's what their wingers were when they first started, and they ended up making the top 4. So I think they just need to rely on their own junior talent and kind of their local development rather than outwardly by.
Well,
So yeah, Fuma was good.
I hope
He's been good.
for Fafita coming to the club doesn't leave, and that the junior players, like you mentioned, they don't go elsewhere because all the salary cap's tied up with Fafita. So hopefully that doesn't happen, and Firma can hold down that position because he looks good. So I'm excited by the Titans' chances next year.
But that's also the good thing about Titans is they can feed off the development of Brisbane, and because Brisbane can't have everyone, they've got to let go of people. They've got to pick who they think will go on to be great.
And
players.
Titans get the rabs.
Well, they get
the scraps off the end.
They do get the scraps. Well, but the thing is, with those scraps, there probably will be a lot of talent.
Yeah, well, Brisbane could get it wrong as they
exactly.
As they have. Yeah.
You look at Ash Taylor, for example. He was touted to be like the next big thing, and obviously he's failed to impress. So there's definitely examples like that coming through. In terms of player I can't fault, you have to look at Kalen Ponga. He reinvigorated the Newcastle attack on the weekend, and again, he is probably the only person they can rely on in attack, as we alluded to before. He absolutely scored a hat-trick. There was 3 line breaks, and he was actually the reason why Townsend got sent off as well. So you can't fault him for that.
Yeah, he won in the game single-handedly.
What an absolute lunatic, though.
He is a lunatic. That was... Watching it live, honestly, I didn't think it was a send-off. But then as I watched the replays more and more, I 100% agree with the decision. It was late, it was high, and it was a shoulder charge. So,
he had no intent to go for anything else, any other tackle. But really, like, you look at before the shoulder charge was banned, that wouldn't have been even remotely a penalty, let alone a send-off. So has the game gotten soft, do you think?
Well, if you look at the slow-mo of that hit, I think it's gone soft. Bloody Ponga's looked like his tooth fell out, but it was the wadding in his nose. But let's go back to Ponga. He was just amazing. That was the best game I've seen him play in his career. I think his footwork and his acceleration off the mark, and when he steps, he doesn't lose pace at all. He just keeps going, and it makes it so hard to defend that sort of stuff.
Well, going back to that Townsend thing, he's getting 3 weeks for that. It was beyond reckless, and it was intentional, and he flew at Ponga with such a force that it basically just, you're right, as you alluded to, that tissue fell out of his nose, and it made for a great picture, and I'm sure it'll be on the highlights reel for a while.
I enjoyed it.
But should that really have been a sin bin? I don't really see why that should have been.
Send-off, you mean?
No, send-off, sorry. I don't know. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why that was a send-off. That was completely ridiculous. I mean, even let alone a sin bin, that shouldn't have been.
Really?
I don't
You're
think,
off your head, mate.
Look, it definitely should have been a report. And
it's foul play. The ref had called stop play. Ponga stopped. He stopped dead in his tracks. If he had heard the whistle, then Townsend should have heard it. He just wanted to kill Ponga, basically. I think he had intentions to knock him out, and he didn't care what was going on around him. He just wanted to hit him, and you should be punished for that.
But it wasn't a swinging arm or anything. He was just launching his body, so he wasn't...
Yeah, but at his head.
Did it collect his head?
Yeah, his shoulder hit his head.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Ponga said it didn't, though, in the post-match interview, but
yeah,
I think he's just trying to stick up for Townsend.
But from what I saw, I didn't really think it connected with the head. I know it looked really bad, but at
the end of the day, a shoulder charge you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, but that's...
And he purposely shoulder charged him.
Yeah, okay, so I guess it was a professional kind of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was late, so there's a few things going against Townsend, and the more I look at it, the worse it gets for me. But I did enjoy it. I missed the shoulder charge.
Yeah, because of Inglis, they got rid of it.
Oh, man, the best one ever. God, I haven't watched that in a while.
And then he started licking his lips after it, like he was going to eat him.
I was on for you guys playing at home, what we're reminiscing was when English shoulder charge Dean Young, South played the Dragons, and I was actually right on the line, 40-metre line where it happened, and I just couldn't believe it. Because that shoulder charges were illegal then, and that was just a good hit. I mean, was he even penalised for it?
No, he was. He got 3 weeks suspension.
Oh.
But rightfully so, he didn't even get sent off for that.
And then that's because shoulder charges were legal.
Yeah, but that was even worse than that. That was sick.
Yeah, that was sick.
Dean Young was
he's never
knocked out completely. Yeah, exactly. Even now, all he says...
No wonder Dragons have lost 2 in a row.
Exactly, he's brain damaged.
Can't say that.
Why not?
No, that's all right. Sorry, Dean. Another big controversial decision over the weekend from the referees was Jazz Tavanga, and he was...
What a name, Jazz.
Love to see him on the dance floor.
It's a whole genre of music dedicated to your first name.
And he was controversially sin bin.
Now this one's disgusting. Look, that was the worst sin bin of all time, I think. It wasn't even punched. First of all, Nathan Brown was in his face, and he just retaliated by shoving him, and they ruled it as a punch.
It was just a little bit of argy-bargy to try and get Nathan Brown off him, which we see in so many tackles. So many tackles involve what happened in this play, and yet, for whatever reason, Jazz was sin bin.
Well, if Nathan Brown didn't react, that's it. That they were just going on, and that was it.
He loves a milk, Nathan Brown, I've noticed.
Yeah, and I think he's just a bit of a grub. And
he
always gets
involved. Well, I think his nickname is Grub. I think that's what they called him when he was at South.
Didn't he stomp on someone's chest when he was at South?
But remember last week he milked a penalty, 2 weeks ago, of a crusher tackle, and then as soon as the penalty was blown, he got up and smiled and quick tap.
Yeah.
I hate milking. I mean, it's go to soccer if you want to take a dive.
Yeah, no, if that, the referee should there been like, well, what'd you do just then? You know, you can't just be on the floor dead for 1 second and then jump straight back up. But there should be something that can penalise milking and obvious blatant things like that, where there's an obvious intention to milk a penalty.
They've introduced that into the AFL, and I think it's worked pretty well. Yeah.
So what do they do for that?
If it looks like you're diving and trying to win a free kick, then the free kick goes against you.
That's good, because I remember seeing one with, I think it was against Melbourne, if I'm not mistaken, when Brett Morris went up and no one was even near him, and he just took an absolute massive dive. It was beyond ridiculous. If there's a video ref that looks at that and says, well, look, it's an obvious blatant milk and dive, so we're going to have to penalise you. And it would stop people from doing these stupid video ref calls, and when there's players that have a slight hand on someone, they just completely fall over, they get pushed over.
There was one, Peachy, he took a dive on the weekend against the Bulldogs, and at first you saw him go down. He was chasing through for a kick, and he claimed that he got pushed out off the ball by the Bulldogs player, but you look at the replay and he ran into him.
Yeah.
And then he went down and stayed down, milking for a penalty. And for that instance, there should be penalties for taking a dive.
But it could also slow the game up when when there's a contested ball and the referee just blows the immediate penalty because it looks like someone's been taken out. But then there's the issue of going to VRF and saying, oh, well, was this a dive or not?
Yeah, it's just the obvious ones that got to be eradicated.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing because there's a lot of things where you can't really say they're diving. It's hard to show intention in
that's
those
pretty
kind of things.
Subjective.
Yeah, but I think in the blatant ones like that Nathan Brown one, that was disgusting.
Disgusting.
Speaking of disgusting, what about Sonny Bill's performance on the weekend?
It's a bit harsh, isn't it? His fitness was disgusting. 15 minutes he played and he was gassed, but that's to be expected. He's been out of the game for, 6 years? 5-6 years, and
2014, was his last year.
He hasn't played competitive sport for 6 months because he was at the Wolfpack, and they're obviously no longer a team this year. So he wasn't. I don't even think he was.
He was cooked. He came on for. They made a massive hype about it, and obviously
that was always going to happen.
He had a tag on his back, and you saw that first tackle when they.
That was awesome, wasn't it?
And he got the offload away, so that was very good. But I never really saw him much after that.
But he still has this aura about him that the size of the man and the athleticism of him close to the line is just scary. And there was actually a time where I don't know who was running to the line, but if they'd given the ball to him, I guarantee Sonny would have been under the posts if he'd gotten the ball. But wasn't to be. That would have been quite a story. I'm sure the Fox Sports would have gone.
Yeah, they would have shown the highlights about 100 times
God.
And then showed it again next week, and you will never see the end of it. But do you think he will be in the final 17? I say that because at the moment you've got Orbison, Collins, and Butcher out. Come finals time, do you want one of these Sonny Bill players?
Well, Collins and Butcher play on the weekend.
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, you're right.
But this week they've picked Sonny Bill and not Orbison, and Orbison's fit to play. So that's a big call because Orbison will be there at the end of
So, yeah, looking at the Roosters team list, it looks like they're pretty much at full strength. They've actually got Orbison on the extended bench, as you mentioned. And they've got Lussick out. And they've got Ryan Hall out. So, yeah, so if Roosters are going to make for a push to make an impact, they'll have to do it now because they've got no excuses now because they've been riddled through injuries and I've always kind of used that as an excuse and everyone says, oh, we'll wait for Roosters to get back to their full best. But they're now at their full best and when they versus Newcastle, it will be an entertaining game.
Yeah, that's a big talking point because at full strength, they've got to leave out one of Sonny Bill or Orbison or Nat Butcher.
Yeah, but I just don't. That's probably a good problem to have because they can do it on rotation. But they're bound to have an injury somewhere.
You're right.
But yeah,
but you couldn't leave out Orbison, could you?
Yeah, I think Orbison's just one of those players you'd love to have.
And for what he's done, and it's his last year, it'd be pretty sad way for him to go out, leave a sour taste in everyone's mouth. But then you can't leave out Sonny Bill.
Oh well, I think it's something they've got to weigh up to depending on how Sonny Bill performs in the next couple of weeks. And if he is getting gassed after 15 minutes, then I don't think he's the right option. I'd rather have Orbison as a utility on the bench and someone who can actually make an impact if, say, Kiri or
his fitness will improve.
Goes down.
I think the more he plays, it's all match fitness. You can do all the work at training. Now. Yeah, but it's Sonny Bill.
What does that mean? See, that's what I mean. You're worse than the Fox Sports commentator. He's a has-been. You have to get over him now. He's not the future.
Yeah, but he's not just like any other 35-year-old.
Yeah, but poor Gallen...
You can't write him off.
Poor Gallen was the only 35-year-old forward that I knew, and he
was on drugs.
Exactly. So what's that going to say about Money Bill?
We're saying he's on drugs. Looking at Sonny Bill and Gallen, I think it's pretty obvious who's the better athlete between those two.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them in a fight, actually.
Well, wasn't that rumoured at one point in the boxing fight?
Yeah.
I think they're going ahead with it. Are they not?
I think Gallen just wants more money.
Yeah, I don't blame him. No, it is a money fight. I'd love to watch that. I'm not a huge boxing fan, but when Hodges versus Hopewadi...
They're the only fights I watch.
No, it wasn't Hodges. It was Gallen and Hopewadi, sorry. That was a very entertaining game. Well, not really a game. It's a fight.
Well, yeah, they're the only fights I watch. I watch the big celebrities or ex-footy players fight because it's entertaining because they don't really know how to fight and someone gets knocked out. That's what you want to see. Time for our favourite segment in pass or play or pass or run, whatever Ago would like to call it.
I'm going to say pass or play.
That's a sloppy pass, that one.
All right, well, this week's topic, we've got Griffin to the Dragons. It was all but confirmed, and there's been so much hype around it and debate and kind of people getting their own 2 cents. What are your thoughts on it?
I like it. I think Griffin's underrated as a coach. He was harshly treated at Penrith when he had got his team in the 8 3 years in a row and then was sacked, which was pretty bizarre. But in terms of if he's the right fit for the Dragons, I don't know that. Only time will tell. But I think he's a good coach. So therefore, I think it's a decent signing from Dragons.
Yeah, it's bizarre that they made the finals from 2016 to 2018. That was his whole tenure. They had a great team, and I know they underperformed in 2016 when they were actually predicted to make the top 4 and potentially also make the minor premiership. But in saying that, they still made the finals, and that's no easy feat. You have to be at least winning 50% of your games, if not more. And the thing about Griffin is that he's very sturdy. He's a very disciplined coach. It will be interesting to see how he operates with the Dragons because the Dragons at the moment are they're very inconsistent at the moment. So they're not every time they turn up on the weekend, you don't know what kind of Dragon side you're seeing, and they've got the excellent attacking strike weapons at the moment. They've got a luxury of ball players and players attacking weapons,
but they're not doing anything. They're not. Duffy's not getting the ball near as much as he should be, and Hunt and Norman can't run the team, in my opinion. And if they've had 2 weeks with everything to play for, and they've lost to the Titans and the Cowboys, who are sitting below them on the ladder.
But I think in those 2 games, you have to look at their defence, and that was actually the reason why.
Yeah.
I know against Titans they had 55 tackles in the opposition 20, and then they still managed to lose because their attack just for whatever reason wasn't clicking. But you look at their defence. So Townsend only had couple of handful of sets on the Dragons line, and they scored. And the same can be said about Cowboys. So there was a penalty that Cowboys got, and immediately after the second tackle, they scored. So that's the thing about Griffin. He'll probably improve their defence.
He is defensively orientated, and he came out and said in the media this week that that's his focus for the Dragons. He thinks the defence is weak. They average 23, 24 points a game conceding. So to win, defence wins premierships, they all say. So he's the coach you want fixing the defence.
And also, similar to Penrith and Newcastle and Brisbane, St George have a great junior base, and that's why I think they ended up going with him, because he has a real focus on those 16 to 19-year-olds that are coming up. And he actually mentioned in one of his interviews about Jaden Sullivan and Tristan Saylor in the background, on top of the talents of Corey Norman and Ben Hunt, who were in first grade, and he's got some tough decisions to make. And he's really good in that regard in terms of just bringing up players and grooming them so that they come up and they shine in first grade and just laying the platform. And it's also an issue sometimes when you look to the market and you're actually paying a surplus for players to come to your club, especially because they have to relocate, and it's a big decision. And often players will take a pay cut. You look at the example of Alex Johnson just re-signing for $100,000 a season less to stay with the Rabbitohs. And to bring players to your club, you ultimately have to pay overs, especially in an underperforming club like St George. So he will be really good in that regard to help those juniors and develop them and bring them into first grade and ultimately develop a whole team around that.
Well, they've had a roster for a couple of years now, which has warranted finals berths, and they've fallen short both on both occasions. And if I'm a Dragons fan, I'm happy about this signing. I think he's, as you said, he's a disciplined coach, and something the Dragons have lacked this season. With their roster, they should be playing finals footy, and I think Griffin will get the best out of his players.
Well, yeah, you look through their starting team. They actually had 5 Origin players last year, and for whatever reason, they're just not clicking. And at the end of the season, they're losing Tyson Fritzell. They've lost Graham and Lafai, and Aiken's also leaving the club. So who would you look at the off-season kind of list, and who do you think they should target? I think they obviously have to go for a forward. I think they've been linked to Tarmel, Jared Wallace, and Christian Welsh from Melbourne. I think Welsh is going to stay with Melbourne. And would you look at Tarmel as a signing, and would you think that's a smart decision considering he's 31 years old?
That's a tough one. He's at the back end of his career. Props do peak late, 27, 28 is their peak. So he's a bit after that, but not to say he's still got a bit of footy left in him. And there is a few younger forwards at the Dragons who could definitely learn off James Tarmel, and he's still playing decent footy. I think the start of this year he was back to his best, which was what he was playing at the Cowboys. So I wouldn't be totally against it, but I still think that there's probably better options.
Well, they've got to get him for the right price. I was highly critical when Penrith first signed him under that really big reform they had when they signed Sauer, Jennings, not Jennings, Idris and the likes of that. And they signed Tarmel for $550. I'm not sure if that was the right amount per year, but I just was highly critical of that. And then I thought he definitely wasn't worth that price tag, and he would underperform. And it took him a while to hit his stride, but he has been of value to Penrith. So if St George can sign him for $300, I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, and as long as Dragons keep their local products, I think it's important. Jacob Host is one, and there's another player who he's only played a couple of games, but I think it was his last name Jackson or something?
For who, sorry?
For Dragons.
Oh, for Jackson Forward.
Jackson Forward, yeah. I think he's a decent player. So if they lock down their junior local products and then sign a couple of players with experience, then I give them a chance to make the 8 next year.
And in terms of their centres at the moment, so they're losing Aiken, and I know they've re-signed the Figa brothers, the twins actually. So one's a centre, one's a winger. So okay. I'd like to see them develop one of those and bring them up. And they've also got Cody Ramsey on the sideline who's making his debut on the wing, replacing Ravioli, or Ravioli. As I like to call him.
What about Joe Offengowie? I think is he off contract?
He's also off contract. I think that would actually be a good signing, but he's got a couple of off-field incidents at the moment. But I think he would be more suited to a team like Tigers or Titans even. Actually, no, Titans, to be honest, they've probably bolstered their forward pack enough, so there's probably not.
I mean, Brisbane could probably do with keeping him on their roster at this stage.
Yeah, I don't know why they're trying to offload him, but I guess they're just doing a roster reform at the moment. And are you passing or playing on Mr. Hook?
Oh yeah, I forgot the actual segment we're doing. I'm definitely playing on it, or I'm running.
Yeah, I was a bit skeptical.
I like it.
I was a bit skeptical when
I've convinced you, haven't I?
When the rumours first came out, but
I've twisted your arm.
You haven't convinced me. I've been watching a couple of the interviews with Mr. Hook, Anthony Griffin, throughout the week, and yeah, some of the arguments he puts forward has made me convinced that he is a man to at least put St George in contention for finals every year. So I'm going to play on that one.
And we see him at our local pub as well, so you can talk to we can
give him some advice.
Yeah.
You can get him to check out the podcast and leave a comment and see what we think of our thoughts, and we might even grab him on the show at one point.
Oh, wouldn't that be good? After a couple of beers. All right. Well, my favourite segment is the bowl prediction because I'm just doing so well in it. And if you want to win some money on Sportsbet, then listen to what I have to say because you're going to come out on top.
No, if you're going to come out on top, you got to listen to Laurie Davis' Lost Lock. It's only won twice. I actually won this week.
Actually?
Yeah.
What were the odds?
It was like $8. I think it was Melbourne, Parramatta, and Penrith to win, I think.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do Loz one better and say the Warriors will upset the Sharks this weekend and there'll be a total of 70-plus points scored in the game. 60-plus points scored in the game. I'll go 60. 70 is a bit too much.
All right.
But both teams' defence very weak. There's a lot of their attack is Sharks is one of the best attacking teams in the comp, and just the way the Sharks defended last week, I think the Warriors will be too much for the Sharks to handle. I hope.
Yeah, well, whatever I say is my bold prediction will lose. So bet on the absolute opposite, and I guarantee you'll win. So I'm going to say Bulldogs to win and under 35 points.
All right,
in the whole game.
Scrappy, grindy. Opposite to what my game is.
Yeah, well, I think Manly can easily put a cricket score on though, but I just don't see Bulldogs attack. And Bulldogs can actually defend quite well. So
and Bulldogs lost 4, and so that just even diminishes their what was already dour attack.
Yeah, speaking of foreign, who would you actually? Where would you actually want to put him next year? Would you hope to be re-signed with the Bulldogs?
I think they've said he already isn't because Bulldogs got Blake Green. So you can't have Blake Green and Foran running around the new team.
Well, why not? You can have two 35-year-olds.
But I really hope Foran gets another contract. I think he can definitely add a lot of value to a team if they get him at the right price.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress. So bold predictions are in. I'm 3 on the trot. Rago is 0 and 3.
3 on the trot?
Yeah.
You lost one of them, didn't you?
I doubt it.
I think you did. We should keep track of this.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, yeah? I swear to God you lost one of them. But anyway, I've lost
No, I said Warriors to beat the Knights.
Yeah.
I said Cowboys to beat Dragons last week. And in the first week, I said
I'm pretty sure
Sean Johnson to have a good game against...
No, you said Corey Norman.
Corey Norman have a big game against Brisbane.
That's right. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And that was the only good game that Corey Norman had, so I don't know. So you're right. Back to Preedy's bold prediction. I'm sure you'll win.
Oh, God, you put the mocker on me now. All right, well, that depressing moment of the week comes to an end with our podcast finishing. We hope you enjoyed as much as we did. And enjoy your week, and we'll see you same time next week.
And also, don't forget to leave your comments because we will be picking the next best comment.
Yes, and thank you to Cam and Lasso who commented this week.
Are you sure it's Lasso? I thought it was Lasso.
It's not important.
All right. Yeah, you're right. Who cares?